a WFSB Plus original. This is the Capitol Rundown.
Welcome to the Capitol Rundown, where we bring you politics from both sides of the aisle that matter to you. I'm Kara Sundlin. I'm joined by our insiders, Themis Klarides, former Republican House leader, and Democratic strategist Jimmy Tickey. Thank you both for being here as we tackle this week's topics. Happy holidays to you both.
Happy holidays.
And to you.
Yeah, so let's start with the Waterbury water crisis. This has been a nightmare as people have been living in really medieval conditions, just not able to flush their toilets and not able to cook. And, you know, even when they did finally get water, some may not have wanted to shower, not knowing if it was safe. So this is something that costs a lot of money to fix, and I'm sure people are afraid if it's going to happen again. Does this require state intervention? Do we need to be changing something here in Connecticut? Jimmy, let me start with you.
Sure. Well, first, our hearts go out to those in Waterbury, because it really is so debilitating to not have any water at all, and to the heroes, all the public works folks who have been working around the clock. And I think the mayor has really been out front communicating to the community, because it sounds like it was really a perfect storm in the way that this happened, and the way that the water broke, and it really affected literally the entire city of Waterbury. And so it does make us think about maintenance. We are in one of the oldest states in the country. Our infrastructure is very old, and so this pipe was 130 years old, and so it does make you think about regular testing, not only for pipes but also bridges. You know, I'm in Shelton, and not so long ago the bridge over Derby and Shelton, the Commodore Hall Bridge, needed some work because it suddenly was found to be not structurally sound, and so there was work there. So regular testing and maintenance for these sorts of things. Now, it's difficult when a pipe is well underground and 130 years old, but it makes you realize that infrastructure is really important, and federal and state dollars constantly being invested in infrastructure really helps save time and helps save crises like this.
Yeah, down the road. I mean, Themis, in your time in the legislature, there's got to be a lot of old stuff here in Connecticut. Should other people be worried, or what can we do about this?
Well, there's a lot of old stuff, but it's about maintenance and upkeep. And, this is why you need to constantly invest money into keeping infrastructure safe and up to date. I mean, in some of the conversations about what happened in Waterbury, in addition to the fact that there was a pipe over 100 years old, there's also valves that aren't even working properly. And what they actually said is, if Joe Smith goes to kind of tighten a valve, and this has happened but before these pipes broke, to tighten the valve, but the valves are so old, they're afraid if they tighten it too much, it'll break the valve, and then Joe Smith will be responsible for like a water main break because the valve breaks. So then they just don't tighten the valve. I mean, that's not the answer to the question. You have to set in motion a plan and a schedule, and that unfortunately takes money. It would take state money, it could take federal money, but it takes people's money. We see it with electricity, right? Nobody wants to pay more, but they also then want to make sure all their power's on all the time. So it's a similar thing. You have to invest in something to keep it updated and keep it safe.
So do we expect that people in Waterbury and other towns might have to pay some more money coming up?
Well, they're saying they've put this long-term plan in place. They're replacing a certain amount of valves at a time, and there's, tens of millions of dollars being invested and put into it, because I think that they realize now that you can't just let this go. I mean, quite frankly, I don't understand how they let it go in the first place. I don't get how somebody can actually say, I'm afraid to tighten the valve because it's so old it might break, and then it might be my fault. I mean, I get you don't want it to be your fault, but there's got to be a plan in place. You can't just kind of look the other way and hope it doesn't happen.
And, when dealing with these sorts of infrastructure measurements, it's so expensive. I mean, when you look at maybe a wastewater treatment or major pipes, I mean, these things are seriously expensive. Oftentimes, a city may not have the funds to do it. Bonding or debt service can only go so far. This is why often the federal government has been asked to act on infrastructure matters. And some federal administrations have done that fairly well, but we need to invest more in infrastructure. It's not always sexy. And when we're sitting in traffic wondering why are they working down below, why are they working on the roads, that's the kind of maintenance we need to be doing to make sure that we avoid crises like this. And sometimes those dollars needs to come from the feds to the states, because these sorts of improvements are really expensive for towns and cities, and they're strapped as it is.
Well, speaking of being strapped, there has been the crisis of people worried about their health care, who get their health care from the exchange, and that it was all going to go up. There was some back and forth. There was some defection of Republicans who jumped over the Democrat side, forcing a vote. And it still didn't pass. So where are we at right now?
Well, we're actually nowhere right now, because they're now going on recess for Christmas, and they won't be back until after the first of the year. You know, this is kind of personal to me in a way, because what's going on is you have a Republican majority in the House by only a few votes.
Yeah.
And so you would think, okay, Republicans can do whatever they want to do, but they can't, because there's only a few votes, and there's always going to be people from the other side, you know, moving back and forth and not knowing exactly which direction they want to go in. But when we did these budget guardrails that the state of Connecticut has, which has now given us $4.3 billion in a rainy day fund, and being in the most fiscally healthy position we've been in a long time, I, as a minority leader, had a 4-vote difference, meaning there were 4 more Democrats in the House than there were Republicans. I could have said, you know what, Democrats, you don't have the votes, and so I'm just going to dig my heels in, and if you don't vote the way I want to vote and do our plan, then we're just going to let this go on forever. But what I did was I went to the other side, and I talked to the Democrats, and we got some Democrats to vote with us, and we ended up passing a budget. Because no matter how important it is for me to win seats, have more Republicans, or have more Democrats if you're on the Democrat side, the one single most important job you have is to do what's best for your district and for your state and for your country. And right now, we have about 20 different plans out there for this healthcare stuff, right? They're expiring at the end of the year. We know that, which means people are going to pay more money. But these subsidies, these tax credit subsidies, were only supposed to be temporary. They went in 2020 during COVID because so many people were getting sick. We wanted to make sure people were covered with insurance. It wasn't supposed to be forever. So you have these plans out there that are saying, okay, let's just extend it all and keep it the way it is. And we have some plans out there that are saying we're not going to extend it at all and just do health savings accounts. Somebody has to say there is a solution in the middle here. That means some of your stuff is going to be in it. Some of my stuff is going to be in it. But I'm not going to get all of mine, and you're not going to get all of yours, because otherwise people are going to continue to get hurt in this country.
So, Jimmy, I mean, is it over? I mean, people are going to have to pay these extra bills?
It certainly doesn't look positive. I mean, this is why we had the government shut down for over 40 days this past fall, because there was a real disagreement. And I don't think that this president, and certainly the Speaker of the House, ever intended to pass a bill or to support any sort of measures to continue these tax subsidies. We saw this in the Senate, and so there was a major disagreement. Democrats wanted to extend the tax subsidies. There were some plans to extend it even for 3 years to keep the costs at least where they're at, so that people do not see the double or tripling of their health plans. But this Speaker of the House had no intentions on doing that or bringing the vote to the floor of the House, and we saw this in the Senate as well. There just was no interest from Republicans. There was a couple of Republicans over the last couple of days who did say, let's act on this, let's keep some subsidies, because let's be honest, 2026, all members of Congress are up for re-election. People are really hurting. They're seeing these expensive bills that they're getting in the mail. People got the notices back in October. They probably have already maybe paid their first bill, since the coverage starts on January 1st. And so I don't see a way where we probably do vote on this in which we will keep those tax subsidies there. And so it's a major disagreement where the Republicans there are not enough votes in this House majority to continue the health care subsidies.
So, you know, I don't think it's fair to say the Republicans never planned on extending this, because here's the reality of it. As I said, there are Republican plans that don't want to extend the subsidies at all. I get that.
They want a health savings account.
Right,
so my question to you was wondering.
Only. But there are many
Trump
plans.
is saying that he would lower this whole thing. The Republican plans could lower health care costs, put the power in the people. Do you agree with that? Do you think a health savings account or some of these other plans will work?
I think that there is definitely a benefit to health savings accounts, because it does put the control more in the people's hands for getting the health care plans that they want. The other thing that we keep missing and nobody's really talking about is another part of the Republican plan is to allow people who own their own businesses or are in small businesses, and we all know small business drives business in this country. It drives the economy in this country, and it's allowed them to go into a group to get group health care plan. That is another positive. My point to that is this. If the Democrats really wanted to make sure that we were going to finish this, they could come to the Republican side on one of these plans. All right, they could have. But they also understand that this is going to be a big issue next November in the midterm elections. And they want to win more seats. I understand that politically, I do. But I also understand it's our job to make sure people are taken care of. And the fact of the matter is, there's so many plans out there, and if you take different pieces of each plan and put it together, you're going to get the right plan that will help the people of this country more than anything else.
So we need some compromise. Just before we move on to a different topic, and I want you to be able to say something, Jimmy, but if you are of a certain income, Connecticut's going to fund
Right.
some of this. So
Right.
some people will be okay. Here,
That's right.
we're giving
That's
state
right.
money to it.
Yeah, look, the Affordable Care Act has been the boogeyman, for Republicans for now 15, 20 years. Every presidential race, they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They want to repeal Obamacare. So we need to be having the conversation about how can we make things better, make healthcare better, better coverage, lower costs than just repealing something with no plan at all. And we need to do better, by the American people and have a plan going forward. And unfortunately, in these tax subsidies being pretty much canceled out, people are going to be seeing those premiums increase. They've already received the notices, and so states are now left to figure out how can we help our own people. Because Connecticut is in such strong fiscal strength, because we have such a large rainy day fund, because we have paid down so much pension debt, it has allowed us to have the wherewithal to react and respond to President Trump's and his administration's sorts of cuts in these areas. And so Connecticut, through the legislature and the governor, have now rolled out a plan that is about $130 million that will be applied for some that will be able to see at least some of those costs be maintained in their health care plans. And that's really through state intervention.
Okay, so our state, that brings us to the question of fiscal health. There's been some new reports that come out. As we end 2025, I want to hear from both of you. Let's start with Themis. How is Connecticut's fiscal health?
Well, right now we have a $4.3 billion rainy day fund. That's our budget reserve. We have in the past 8 years increased our credit ratings. We have in the past 8 years had surpluses every year. And this is all because of the 2017 budget that I was thankfully part of. That put in these guardrails, right? We've talked about them many times: bonding caps, spending caps. You can only borrow so much, you can only spend so much, et cetera. One of our biggest issues, if not our biggest issue at the time, and it still is to a large measure, was our state pensions and our teachers' pensions. And at the time, 8 years ago, we were only 37% funded. 37%. We were on the lowest in the country. Now we're 60% funded for our state employee pensions. And we have paid down, I think, $10 billion in those years. We are now saving the state almost $900 million a year, because we're paying these things down. And so all of that is great. But looking forward, we see issues with the transportation fund. We have a lot of borrowing going on with transportation, and they have concerns. They have concerns that if that continues by 2030, 32, that could really be an issue. The other issue is we don't know what's going on with the federal government, right? We don't know. We teeter on recession here and there, and that could be a problem. We have an aging population. So those are all things that are affecting. Right now we're good, and for the next few years we will be good, but we have to be mindful of all of those things that are sitting out there and make very, very responsible decisions. That's why these guardrails are so important, because if we do not continue paying down the pension debt and we do not continue saving money, then we're going to go back to the same fiscal situation we were in the past, which was not good.
All right, and Jimmy, how healthy do you think we are?
I think we're very healthy, and even independent analysts have said the same. For 70, 80 years, we really, as a state, kicked the can down the road and let those debts just build up. That's kind of like just keep running the credit card through until you max it out, and then you get another, and you max that one out. And so what we've seen over the last couple of years is the paying down pension debt at a significant rate, having our rainy day fund be approaching $5 billion. It's almost the highest that is allowed by law to have our rainy day fund, and that is helpful for the times that we are in and a potential recession, that the state would be able to respond. And there was actually an independent analysis that said, if we had the kind of recession that we had back in 2008, 2009, how would Connecticut fare? And all of the budget surplus that we have and that rainy day fund would be able to be used, and there would still be some left over, meaning because the rainy day fund is so large, we'd be able to withstand a recession and not have to make really significant hurtful cuts to our own state budget. So no matter how you cut it,
We have a good savings account.
we have a very good savings account. We've been paying down debt. The fiscal health is very strong, and Treasurer Russell also has really seen excellent returns on the investment. So as the state invests, we are seeing very good returns on that. So much so that some are wondering, look, can we invest more in the programs that this president is cutting and causing harm? To the earlier point about health care, the state being able to free up some amount of money to help people when they need it with their health care.
Well, let's remember, though, with that great budget reserve we have, we can sustain a $2 billion recession, right? We can't sustain a $5 billion recession. So we have to keep hoping that, the federal government keeps doing what they need to do, because they need to be a strong partner with us, and that's part of the concern.
Okay, so speaking of the federal government, some news was made yesterday that President Trump's White House announced the Kennedy Center will now be called the Trump Kennedy Center because of a unanimous vote by his newly appointed board. You know, the Kennedy family has called this insane and insulting. Some are saying you can't even legally do this because it's a federal building, and just like you can't rename the Lincoln Memorial without Congress, you might not even be able to do this. But either way, the Trump White House has made this announcement. And Themis, let me start with you as a Republican. Is there any precedent in this, or what's up with this doing this?
Can you see the steam coming out of my ears at this point? That's how upset I am about this. First of all, there's no precedent. Secondly, there's been 12 presidents since President Kennedy. I mean,
many Republicans.
Actually 11, you know, but Trump twice. And not one of them has tried to do this. Now, here's the bottom line. Legally speaking, you cannot change the name of the Kennedy Center. Legally. That doesn't mean you can't symbolically change it, which is what he's going to do, because legally you cannot change it without an act of Congress. Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, the president comes in and appoints people, and every president does the same thing. They'll say, okay, well, I'm going to take a few people off, and I'm going to put a few of my people on the board of the Kennedy Center. But President Trump did like all of them, basically. And he's claiming that he's so much interest in the arts, and he is, and that's great. But we should.
You do believe he's genuinely interested.
We shouldn't be honoring him for that with a name change. We should say, you're the president. You should be supporting the arts, especially in Washington, D.C. I mean, he has supported that Kennedy Center and what they do. But, you know, he picked the Kennedy Center honors this year, I think, which I don't think has ever happened. I'm not really certain of that, but I don't think he should be choosing it either. But the fact of the matter is he appoints a lot of people. Then there are appointments on the board that are like the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, and then they have appointments. And so those people, I believe legally, and this is a question lawyers are all talking today, you know, fast and furious about whether they have standing, meaning do they have the legal right to sue because it has affected the Kennedy Center itself by changing the name. So I would say stay tuned, but I'm guessing somebody who's on the board now, I'm guessing a Democrat, will then sue. And then they will say, okay, well, you can't do anything until this is adjudicated and decided by a court. But, you know, the interesting part of it is the president keeps saying that they're in financial distress. Yet the former chairman that he got rid of, I believe, gave $100 million of his own money. And I think federally, the Kennedy Center only gets a quarter of its funding from the federal government. The rest is ticket sales and private donations. So.
Okay. Jimmy, you're shaking your head.
No worries, because we actually agree on this.
Yeah, okay, there's some agreement here regardless of party, but there's also been new placards put up in the White House underneath different presidents that are subjective, to say the least.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And all this president cares about really is himself and putting his name or his face on everything that he can, much like his businesses. If the Kennedy Center was in fiscal distress, well, now with Trump's name on it, how many businesses has he bankrupt? So I think many people will still call it the Kennedy Center, even though he has stacked the board and already put up the signs with his name. I think that people will still know this is the Kennedy Center. Maybe it will play out in the courts. I think much of it is ridiculous and all about himself. And interestingly, for a president who thinks that affordability is a hoax, he's really spending no time working on affordability, working on lower costs for Americans, or trying to make life better. He is spending his time tearing down the White House, building up a new side of the White House, giving private jets to cabinet secretaries, and renaming some of our long-held institutions in this country with his own name. It is totally ridiculous.
All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to wish you both a very merry holiday season. The Capitol Rundown will take a little hiatus, but we will be back in the new year, and we'll also be bringing you live coverage from the first day of the session live at the Capitol. So we will continue to bring you balanced information, politics from both sides of the aisle that matter to you from both of our insiders. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, happy everything. Thanks for being with us.
Soon.
Yeah. All right, and for now, we'll return you to the stream.